Hi, everyone. Welcome to Evaluating and Communicating Performance. My name is Jean Gould, and I am a Leadership Development Specialist on the Leadership Development team here at Maine Health. As you can see, the performance appraisal period is from August 1st to November 18th of this year. So the first thing that I wanted to go through are the performance appraisal key timelines. So the review period for the annual review process here at Maine Health aligns with our fiscal year, which started October 1st, 2021 and runs through September 30th, 2022. So managers can begin working on their annual performance as soon as August 1st, but they must be completed no later than November 18th of 2022. The annual performance appraisals are based on the position each care team member had as of July 24th of this year. And then if a care team member transferred after July 24th of this year, the previous leader is responsible for completing that performance appraisal on that care team member. Care team members who receive an introductory review, so that's that 6-month review, this year do not receive an annual review. So you do not have to do another one at the end of this fiscal year. If somebody's had their 6-month review done already, we only have one appraisal per calendar year. So when we think about the importance of performance reviews, what do we think of? Like, what is important to be happening during that time? So I just want you all to think about that. What are the important things about performance reviews? Why are they important? Why do they do them? So there's a couple key reasons why they are important. And the first one is really about collaborative conversations. We know that these conversations that are facilitated with quality feedback really can help care team members connect and engage with their work, with their leaders, and the system. So it's a great opportunity to kind of bolster that relationship, that engagement, and really help individuals feel connected to what they're working on, to their team, and to the organization. In addition to this is really a great opportunity for you as leaders to get valuable insight into the care team members' goals. So when we're thinking about development and professional goals, having these conversations really can give you some insight into what makes this person tick, what are they excited about, what do they want to work on in the future, as well as it's an important connection point to the work of the team. So really, again, helping to make those connections for care team members to how their work contributes to the team, and then what type of things they can focus on moving forward, and what things they've focused on in the past that have really made an impact on the team. It also provides an opportunity for care team members really to share and to celebrate their successes that they've completed throughout the review window. So we do a lot of work over the course of our year, and this is a time to reflect and celebrate and look at what has been done, what goals have achieved, what metrics have they met, how have they been doing along the way. And it's also a way to collaboratively discuss upcoming work as you plan your work ahead. So this is a perfect opportunity to take a look back, reflect on all the great work, but also start to look forward and have those conversations about what are we going to work on moving forward? What does our work plan look like? What does the work of the team look like? So it's a great opportunity for you both as a care team member and the manager to have those opportunities to reflect, celebrate, talk about the future, and also get some great insight into your care team members and what really gets them jazzed, what makes them excited, and also what makes them tick. So next we want to be thinking about what makes a performance review successful. So how do we know when a performance review is effective and successful? So I want you to just take a couple seconds to think about that, whether it's previous performance reviews that you have delivered or ones that a manager has delivered for you. What are the components that you felt like made that successful, or that you think make a successful performance review? So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to think about that. So some components, maybe you wrote these down, but these are things that you do want to be considering when you're delivering a performance review. Because we want them to be achievement oriented. We want that to be the focus. So focus on what was accomplished and what the successes are. So you really want to be spending time celebrating successes and then also strategizing how to leverage past successes for future development. So thinking about what went well, why did it go well? Focusing more on the why something went well and not just the what went well. So some prompts are going to be, what did you learn from those successes? Why did you achieve it in that way? What did you learn from other successes that you did? How did you implement that? So and then in turn, you're gaining some insight into where those strengths are, how those can be capitalized on moving forward when we're thinking about other projects and other initiatives. So we're thinking about the projects that they worked on, the outcomes of those projects, the achievements that they made, and also their roles and responsibilities. And we're thinking about this over a long period of time, so it really is an opportunity to look back, reflect, celebrate, and really understand the why behind the successes. The next area is we really want to be fair and accurate. So that means that we need to be including some qualitative and quantitative metrics. When we provide fair and accurate data, employees are able to make sense of their experiences. So it's more cut and dried. This is what we saw, this is why, this is what was delivered. So using examples of specific incidents and projects that made an impact really help an individual make sense of how this rating came about or why something happened in a certain way. So using multiple metrics, data, identifying completed projects, looking at a budget impact, all of those can be utilized for data. Also, you as the manager want to be giving some qualitative data. So what did you see as the manager in this individual? What were they doing well? How were they successful? And you really want to give context, so being descriptive and specific with your feedback about the strengths that you saw in that individual and also about opportunities for development. We want to be thinking about that too. We all need to develop. And more often than not, we want that feedback so that we can grow and continue to develop as individuals. So we also want these to be developmental focused. So reflecting on progress made, looking at, again, from the beginning potentially of the review period to now and talking about those successes and the progress that happened during that time. And conversation should focus on progress towards development goals as well as performance. So these include progress towards developmental goals with a future-oriented focus. So thinking about what we're going to do for the next year, how are we going to continue to develop you, and reflect on the progress made and discuss ways to continue to prioritize development. So this should be open and honest, asking individuals where they want to go, what projects they might want to work in, what's their interest. Goals that you talk about really should be made in a collaborative effort. They should be meaningful to both parties. And goals really should be set together. So these developmental goals should be set together with you and your care team member and also tie into the bigger goal of the department and where the department goals are. So the next piece is to be honest. Feedback should be clear, it should be actionable. We want it to be both positive and constructive. So providing candor with kindness. So really trying to be kind in your delivery, be positive, try to highlight strengths and where people are doing well. And when we need to give constructive feedback, we want to have those difficult conversations in a kind manner. So balance providing feedback and partnership and how you achieve better outcomes. So you can bring that employee into the conversation if there are some difficult performance issues that need to be addressed. You can have that conversation, bring the individual into that and brainstorm. How can we make this better? How can I support you as a manager? How can we continue to grow and develop? We also don't want to make performance issues personal. So this is where we're sticking to facts. So this kind of goes to the fair and accurate. When we're delivering facts and we have data to support it, it's just factual. We're not making it personal about someone's individual personality. We're making it about the work. And it's also important to normalize the need for development. We all need development, and there's areas where we're going to be stronger in, that we need more coaching, that we need more support, and that's okay. We want to normalize that and make individuals feel that they're supported in their growth. So if there's a performance issue, that's okay. We can work through that. We just need to have some clear understanding and some boundaries and some outcomes and a plan to address that. So this really is a conversation. We want this performance review time to have bi-directional feedback. So this is an opportunity for you as leaders to learn how you can best partner with that individual care team member for success. So it's really about listening, opening up dialogue, asking questions, and trying to better understand, again, what makes that individual tick, where they see their strengths, where they see that they might need some more development, and have honest conversations and ensuring, again, that we're also listening as well as managers, that we take the time to allow the individual to have that conversation, have feedback, ask questions. So I would just encourage you all to also think about conversations that you've had in the past and what has worked and what hasn't worked, what has gone well and what hasn't gone well. So that might be something that you take a few minutes to do at the end of this, is really thinking about when you had a performance review that you came out feeling like it was very successful, or when you had a performance review and you kind of came out and you were like, that was just awful. I feel awful. And why that happened that way. That's what we want to avoid. We don't want to have people coming out of performance reviews feeling badly about their performance. We want to have individuals coming out feeling successful and that they have a plan forward and that they feel supported for the work that they've done or supported in any need for continued development. So now let's think about delivering your performance review. What's really important before we have the performance review is to really set clear expectations for what the conversation will accomplish. So during these, we're going to be reviewing projects, we're going to be talking about responsibilities, we're going to be celebrating successes, we're going to be identifying any need for development. And we're also going to be talking about developing professional goals for the next year or developmental goals that the individual wants to achieve. So the conversation should be focused on performance and development. Compensation questions or other HR topics should be handled as a separate conversation. So you want to have a plan for if salary questions arise so that you're able to address their issue without derailing the conversation. But this time really is about reflecting on the work that was done over the past year, how that was implemented, talking about performance, talking about development, and those are what we want to have as the expectations of the conversation. Those other pieces are important as well, but the performance evaluation time is not necessarily the time to have those conversations. So just have a plan for if those questions or conversations start to come up. The conversation should also be reflective of feedback that's been shared throughout the entire review period. So hopefully we're going into these performance reviews and care team members have had conversations with you about their performance throughout the year. This really is not a time when a care team member should be hearing first-time critical feedback. So if there is an individual that you feel that you're going to deliver some critical feedback during this performance review, I might hold that, have the performance review, maybe talk about some performance areas that have been identified throughout the year and set up another time to talk about something that's significant that might be new for that care team member. So again, the conversation should really be about the past year, about conversations that have been already had, and there shouldn't be any big surprises during this conversation. So you want to be an active listener. So that means ensuring that you have time dedicated for your direct report to ask questions, to share their perspective on their accomplishments, their effectiveness, and their goals. If I was a manager, I would preemptively ask care team members to come prepared with that. So to share their perspective about what they've done besides what's on their actual performance evaluation, and then come prepared to talk about goals for the next year, how they felt like they were effective this year, so they're prepared for that conversation. Then you want to be mindful of the delivery environment. So ideally, these conversations happen in person in a neutral place, meaning it could be in a conference room or it could be at a coffee shop if it's private and quiet. Sometimes having it in, let's say, the manager's office, that in and of itself brings in some anxiety sometimes for care team members. It's not a place they might feel 100% equal or safe. So just taking that into consideration. Virtual can be fine. We're in that day and age. But again, setting up the expectations of making sure that we have a quiet environment, distraction-free, and that would be in virtual or in an in-person setting. So we want to also be thinking about turning our cell phones off, turning our phones off so it's not ringing, not looking at other messages that are coming through. We really want to be sending a message that you're prioritizing that time for that individual. And that goes both ways. So for both parties to be putting away technologies, muting phones, and really focusing on the conversation that's at hand. During these conversations can be a great time to integrate some coaching prompts. So when you're discussing progress, creating a developmental plan, and performance-related goals, these questions can help really guide that conversation. So simply starting with some prompts of, asking what accomplishments were you most proud of in the last few months? Where did you feel successful? What went well for you? And then what made it one of your most proud of? So why do you feel that it was one of your more successful projects or accomplishments? And what made you proud of that? What did you do? And why? What was the outcome that made you feel so successful about that? And then in addition, what was different about it that made it go so well? So have that individual think a little bit further into what were the skills and the resources and the partnerships or whatever it was that made that accomplishment go so well that they felt it was so successful. And then we can start to capitalize on that a little bit. How can we help you perform that way in the future? So what do you need, and what do you need from me as your manager? How can we partner on this together? So how can we continue to have you have these successes and feel that your accomplishments were well executed? So how can we work together to continue to do that? And then what did you learn from this experience that you can apply to some other areas where you want to improve your performance? So in other words, how can we translate these skills, these tools, these resources that the individual tapped into to now translate that into other areas of development that that person might want to continue to explore and grow? So how do we use those to potentially work in areas that there is a need for development? Then asking, who are your partners? What resources can you continue to leverage to support you and provide that information that you need to feel successful? And then what data or metrics do you think will help you measure success? So how are we measuring success? What are we looking at? What does that look like? Is it goals that are executed? Is it tasks that are executed? Is it timelines? Is it budget impact? So what is it that we're measuring that makes an accomplishment successful? And then how do these strengths, goals, resources, and metrics align to create your work plan for the upcoming year? So thinking about all of this information that we're getting and we're understanding from this individual, so what things went well, where they felt their successes were, who they were partnering with, and then we're thinking about moving forward, what projects does all this work with that we see that we need on the team? And we can identify those and then look forward to say, these can really translate well into a variety of projects, and we're going to move you into this area and focus on this, and so on and so forth. And then also identifying that there might be some things that the employee is struggling with, and how do we translate these skills and resources and whatnot into developing those areas that an individual might be struggling with. And then how do we connect our goals for the team and the departments? When we're creating these goals and we're creating the work plan moving forward for the next fiscal year, how do those tie into the bigger goals of the department? How do they tie into the goals and the mission of the organization? So helping to make that connection for the individual. How does the work trickle up per se? So how does their work, their accomplishments, their successes impact the team, and then how does it impact the bigger picture of the organization? It's really important to make those connections for individuals so that they feel that their work is important and making an impact. All right, so now we've talked about what makes a successful performance review, but a little bit about the delivery of the performance review, and then some coaching prompts to use during the performance review conversation to help you as the manager better understand the individual strengths, where they feel their accomplishments are, what they tapped into to feel successful, and then how to translate those skills and all that information into projects moving forward, and how to integrate those into their development plans as well. So next we're going to shift slightly and talk about the more tactical part of performance reviews. So that is around the performance ratings and comments. I think one important thing to consider is to send the performance rating descriptions ahead of time to your care team members and ask them to review those descriptions. I think it's not uncommon that we forget the details of them, what they mean. So when we're getting a rating, we have maybe one thought about what that means versus what it actually means in the description. So I encourage you to send the rating descriptions ahead of time to your care team members and have them review that prior to your performance review conversation. So we do know that inaccurate performance ratings can make it really challenging to motivate high performance. It also makes it challenging to identify top talent, and to fairly link merit increases, as well as honor our values of integrity, excellence, and being patient-centered. So these are just a few tips for helping you rate a little bit more accurately when you are going through the performance review. The first one is making sure your rating really captures performance across the entire review period. So again, we're thinking back through October all the way up to September 30th of this year. So we're capturing a large time period, so we want to think about that period in its entirety, not just the past couple months, which is much easier to do because it's hard to remember way back, 10, 11 months ago, what the performance looked like. And then making sure that you're looking at each performance criteria one at a time. So you're going through each of the areas and thinking about those individually. You want to be focusing on performance and the impact of that performance on our mission and vision. And I would add to that the impact of that performance on your team, your team's goals, and your team's outcomes. You want to rely on data and observations captured and documented throughout the year. So that's how we've captured what's been done, work that's been executed, goals that have been achieved, any performance issues, anything like that. So we're relying on that data. And then we're leaning into the power of honest and open feedback in driving high performance. So really having honest conversations, providing honest feedback, and being gentle and with good intent when we're delivering all of that feedback. But being honest is very important so that your care team member feels that the conversation is really genuine. We want to help the care team member fully understand the description of the ratings, as I've mentioned, and provide the context for your ratings. So when you're going through and you've rated lower than a care team member has, you can refer back to the descriptions to help support whether that's accurate or maybe it needs to be changed. But it is really important to understand those ratings. So next we're going to review what those are. So we have NA, which is, this is not applicable to the employee or the reviewer does not have enough knowledge to make a reasonable assessment. Sometimes this might be in events where there's been a big shift in workload focus or something's happened, like I think of COVID, a lot of our work got derailed, so we weren't able to necessarily focus on the specific areas that might be described in our job descriptions within a performance evaluation. So we could put NA in there if something has shifted dramatically. RD requires development, is defined that expectations aren't met, expected results are not achieved, values are not demonstrated consistently, improvement to meet expectations is needed to be considered successful. So this might be an individual who is having some performance issues and might need some HR interventions or some conversations around goals and what they're looking for within their work environment. But this individual is not meeting the expectations defined within roles and responsibilities of their job description. Partially achieves is mixed performance with inconsistent results, achieves some but not all major job responsibilities or expected outcomes, requires more consistent contributions and outcomes to meet expectations and be considered successful. So in this situation, it really could be somebody who's new to their profession or newly out of college, just doesn't have a lot of experience or knowledge to bring to the table. So this might be completely appropriate for somebody who, is learning and developing and growing and that hasn't had a lot of experience to bring and a lot of knowledge to bring. This also could be somebody who's not super engaged in their work. So somebody who's kind of just moving along and doing day to day, but not really engaged that much. And this is an opportunity to have some conversations with that individual to better understand what they need to be successful, where they feel like they might be struggling or they need more support in, or what resources they might need. SA is successfully achieves. This individual consistently meets expectations in all areas of responsibility, may exceed expectations in some areas, demonstrates competency and initiative to do a complete and quality job, accomplishes assignments within agreed upon parameters, demonstrates all of our values, makes a positive contribution to the overall work environment. So this is someone who's doing quite well, is a good worker, probably engaged in their work, is excited about their work. So they're meeting deadlines, doing quality work, producing great outcomes. Exceeds expectation is somebody who's consistently achieving overall strong results, consistently exceeds expectations in most areas, many areas, consistently demonstrates all of our values, exhibits a strong knowledge of the job, consistently goes above and beyond to impact results at a team level, and willing to share knowledge with the team. So this is, again, somebody who's very knowledgeable in their area, very invested in their area of expertise, willing to share that knowledge, mentor others. So someone who's going above and beyond and really is executing well and excited to take on more responsibilities and continue to meet deadlines and expectations and project goals. Exemplary, consistently exceeds all expectations of the job, demonstrates expertise such that others seek out their advice and assistance, proactively and positively extends their influence beyond the scope of their responsibilities, considered a role model for all others, for all of our values. So this person is going above and beyond, is probably an expert in their area, might be working outside of their roles and responsibilities in their job description, and someone who's really excelling and being a positive influence and being influential in their position. So these are a great tool and mechanism to, when there might be a disagreement between you and your care team member who you're having a conversation with, where they feel that they're in one area and you feel they're another, is to look at these and to help identify the why there's that discrepancy in the ratings. So it could be if someone puts a successfully achieves, but you put partially, and it could be that major responsibilities and expected outcomes aren't executed all the time, and you have examples about when that happens. So that's when this is a good tool to use to be able to have those conversations and help the care team member understand the why behind the rating. So we also have the tactical process for the entire performance appraisal period, from pre-performance appraisal conversation to post-performance appraisal conversation. So these checklists will help kind of identify all those tactical pieces that we want to be thinking about throughout the entire process. And the first one is for the manager, are thinking about what ways you're able to pull and capture the past year's work of your direct reports. So what are the tools that you can use to help with that documentation and recall of remembering what was done by each of your direct reports? So I want you to think about that in your day-to-day interactions, think about it when you're meeting with individuals. How do you capture that information? So some ways, examples are notes from conversations, comments that have been made, that have been documented, feedback, emails, using one-on-one forums if you use those during your one-on-one times together, that you've documented those so you can keep those saved, capturing discussions. So when we recap discussions and having those noted, making documentation on that, looking at any moments to shine. So where has this individual received recognition and for what? Also, any comments or feedback from others you might have received through email or whatnot, and capture all of those into a folder. And that folder can be saved on your H drive. You could create a Teams channel to capture all that information. Both of those areas can be set as private, so no one has access to them. You just don't want to keep this information on your desktop. And then starting at the beginning of the performance appraisal period is really when you want to be sending out reminders about performance appraisals, just reminding care team members that this is coming up and to be thinking about it and to be preparing. So sending out those little nudges to your care team member. And as a manager, you want to log into Performance Manager and ensure that all your direct reports are listed there. So you might have new hires, you might have a transfer. So going in and making sure they're all on your dashboard there and ready. So when you go in, you're able to complete the performance evaluation and you're not having to connect with HR to find them, to ensure that they're on there. So preemptively just go in and make sure that everyone is listed. And then you want to plan how the meeting will happen. So whether you want to hold it in a neutral place if possible, whether you're going to have it in person, virtual, how long you're going to have it for. I would recommend scheduling it for an hour to an hour and a half, if at all possible, if your time allows. And that way you can have that robust conversation. I would send the rating descriptions, as I mentioned, to direct reports and ask them to review that ahead of time so they are knowledgeable and feel informed about what the ratings actually mean. And then for your direct reports, I would ask them as well to log into Performance Manager, ensure they know where to find that and that they're able to get into it. And then if they can't, to let you know for any support or help they might need. And you want them to find their performance evaluation and review topics to be discussed. So become familiar with the topic areas so they can be thinking again how to complete it and what needs to be filled in. We want them to prepare, so be reflective on their accomplishments and goals achieved throughout the entire review period. So thinking about what those are, what they want to highlight, what they want to discuss with you. So collecting examples of projects worked on, successes, goals achieved, and whatnot. I would also encourage them to come prepared with goal ideas for the next year. So what do they want to work on? What do they see as goals and aspirations, whether it's their developmental goals or their goals towards their work aspirations as far as projects that they would like to work on. So then you can have that conversation together during the performance review and detail those out a little bit. We want them to block time on their calendars so that they can complete their own appraisal. So there's time dedicated, carved out for them to think through and be thorough in their performance evaluation. And then encourage them not to wait until the last minute to complete their self-evaluation. So hopefully by having some time on their calendar, they won't wait to the last minute, but it is really important to be thoughtful and reflective so that you all can celebrate everything that has been achieved and done over the entire year. And then with your direct reports, you want to establish a self-evaluation completion deadline. So this, you're working with the direct report to say, let's plan on having this done by X date. And you want this to be a few days ahead of your scheduled performance meeting. So you have your performance meeting on the books, and then you're both having a conversation that it's going to be done 2 days before you actually have the meeting. Then you as a manager want to prepare by reflecting over the past year and complete your direct reports evaluation a few days prior to the scheduled meeting. What's important here is not to sign and save your appraisal piece at this point. So you can complete it, you can fill it out, but do not sign and save. Once you sign and save, it cannot be changed, or it can be, but it's a little bit of a process. So I'd recommend not signing and saving at this point. And then when your direct report has finished theirs and you know what that date is, you can go in and review your direct report's self-evaluation. And then you might make some necessary changes to your review based on their feedback. They might have put in a project that you forgot about, or went more into detail about how they were successful about something, and you want to reflect that in your comments. So this gives you a little bit of time to be able to do that before you meet. Once you've done that, download the PDF version of the evaluation with both sets of comments. So yours are in there and your direct reports. What I have noticed in the past is when prior to the appraisal being signed and saved, when you download it, it automatically defaults, I think, to requires development. So I would just preemptively identify that when you send your direct reports an email with the PDF attached to it. So you're going to want to send your direct reports an email at least one day prior to the meeting, letting them know that you're looking forward to discussing their year's work and celebration, and then attach the PDF for them to review. And that's where I would say, that it defaults to our requires development, and that's not your final rating, unless of course it is, but it does default to that for whatever reason. So you're sending that ahead of time, and this allows your care team members some time to review, digest, take in the information that they're reading from you, so that when you have a conversation with them, they're not spending time in that moment trying to review what you've said. If they have any reactions to it, they have some time to think about that reaction ahead of time and how they might respond, or it just gives them time to digest the information instead of doing that in the moment when you're having that conversation with them. So during the performance appraisal time, we want to ensure that we're holding all phone calls, all texts, and make sure there are no other interruptions. So we're turning off our cell phones, we're turning off our emails, we're making sure our phone is on mute, closing the door, whatever, to make sure that we are limiting any interruptions, because we really want to have our care team members feel like we're focused on them and this time is allocated for them, and that goes vice versa for them, holding their phone calls, turning off their texts, emails, and so on. We want to keep salary issues separate from performance appraisal meetings. This conversation should be on the past, futures performance and future growth, and we talked about that and the importance of keeping that separate. And we're focusing again on two main things. We're focusing on accomplishments of roles and responsibilities using fair and accurate data, and development within the role. So that's really our focus area for this performance appraisal. We want to also ensure that there's ample time for your direct reports to ask any questions and provide feedback on their achievements. So allowing them to ask questions, allowing them to have that conversation and feel like they're engaged and part of that, and that they feel like that they're being heard and listened to. And then we want to discuss performance and developmental goals. So that's when hopefully they're coming prepared with some thoughts about what they would like to develop in, what their goals are. You can talk about where you see them going, your goals, and then collaboratively together develop those performance and developmental goals for the next year. Post-performance appraisal. After the meeting is complete, you want to make any necessary edits or adjustments to the evaluation based on your conversation with the individual. And then once your edits are made, you need to save and send the evaluation back to the employee. That's when you're saving and sending. It goes back to the employee. If you do not do this step by November 18th, the employee rating will default to SA. So it's really important that you finalize this step and make sure that this gets completed. When you do this, then the final step is the employee signing off on their evaluation. So they've had time to reflect on it, review it, and say, yes, this all looks good and cool, and I'm signing off on it. And then that is the final process of the performance appraisal. So the last thing we're going to touch on is delivering a performance review on a leader. So there are some slight nuances to take into consideration that are different. Um, so similar to last year, performance appraisals will have an engagement section for all leaders. So anyone who has a direct report, meaning that 10% of a leader's total performance rating will be based on the engagement section in 2022. We know that engagement is a key area of focus for all leaders with direct reports, and including it in the performance appraisal helps us to emphasize the importance of creating a thriving workplace culture that is centered around delivering exceptional patient care. The engagement section of the performance evaluation will be directly linked to two measures, and those are your engagement means score for your team, and then also taking action on engagement results. So that might be that you did some action planning or some activities with your team around engagement, and how those played out for your care team members. So for any questions regarding care team engagement, related to your performance evaluation or in general or on care team engagement, there's two resources that you can tap into. You can email care team engagement at mainehealth.org, or you can visit the care team engagement page. There's tons of resources on there to help you as a leader around developing any goals or any initiatives around engagement, or to help understand more about Q12 and how that impacts engagement or anything. There's lots of resources there for you. So this brings us to the conclusion of this presentation on evaluating and communicating performance. If you have any questions regarding this presentation or about having a performance-related conversation with your care team members, please feel free to email us at leadershipdevelopment@mainehealth.org. We're happy to answer any questions or point you in the right direction. A couple of additional resources. First, you can find this presentation, this PowerPoint, right on the same page where you access this presentation, which is on the New Leader Foundations page. You can download it. You'll have all the slides as well as the slides that review how to actually work in Performance Manager, so that technical piece. And the additional resources, if you have Performance Manager questions specific to the technology, you can email performancemanager@mainehealth.org. There's some other slide decks and information on the HR intranet site. That's FAQs and the focal deck that went out in Kelly Elkin's communication initially. And then again, for any engagement related questions, you can email engagement@mainehealth.org. Or if you're looking for additional resources, you can certainly check out the care team engagement page on the intranet site. I want to thank you again for your time. I hope this presentation was helpful, and I hope you all have an awesome day. Thanks.